I've paid thousands of dollars in courses to learn what you're basically teaching on your podcast for free. What you're putting out there is so valuable. So, I just really want to acknowledge you, and I definitely send everyone to your podcast.
You were virtually one of the first mentors that I looked up to and started following. You're always one step ahead of the game. So I just wanted to give you kudos and props for that, because lots of people are watching, lots of people are learning from it.
Tucker and the whole TTM crew, Dan and Chris, thanks so much for your support. I love what you guys do, and a huge, huge fan. Having this support's huge. So I'm grateful for that.
What's up, everybody out there in listener land? This is the Real Dealz Podcast, episode 239, and as always, I am your host, Tucker Merrihew. I want to thank you guys for joining me for what will be another awesome episode of RDP. I've got a great show for you guys this week. Last week, I did a little personal show, you, me, and the microphone. This week, I've got a guest, and somebody that I think you guys are really going to enjoy listening to his story. I've known this individual for a number of years now. And I actually did some private consulting with him, probably 2 or 3 years ago, when he was just getting started in the business, and he was trying to get over the hump of, trying to get the marketing to work, trying to figure this business out, trying to get traction, and ultimately just trying to make this a successful endeavor, which he's done. He's had some bumps along the way, which we all do. He's had some challenges. He's had one project that was a real big anchor project, but he worked through it, he got through it, and he popped out the other side a better investor for it. And so I think overall it's just a great story of perseverance and burning the ships and just saying, you know what? I'm going to make this work, and I don't care what it takes, but I'm going to make it work. And so he did a really, really good job of that, or has done a good job of that. And he's continuing to grow his business. He's on the edge now of looking to potentially hire some outside people to help him and his fiance as they continue to grow and kind of move into other markets. So I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this week's show. The individual's name is Danny Pitcher, and he's from the Charleston area, so many of you may know him. He's also a DFA member, has been for many years, and just an all-around great guy. So I know you guys are really going to enjoy this week's show. Now, before we get into that interview with Danny, a few things I want to talk about. Number one is our housekeeping items, as I always do. First thing, our Driving for Dollars app. For those of you guys that have not downloaded it, go download it. It's free. You get a 5-property free trial. You can take it for a test drive. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you just go to the iTunes Store or Google Play Store and search for the Driving for Dollars app. It's the only one that can be named that because we have a trademark on it. We've got a number of enhancements that we're doing currently that I've mentioned on the show before, but we've also got some other really cool stuff going on behind the scenes that we'll announce soon as we kind of work out some data stuff on the back end. But we've got some really cool stuff going on, and you guys are really going to like to hear what it is that we're going to be able to enable you guys to do, as well as just improve the overall functionality of the app as we continue to move forward to make it just an absolute beast when it comes to building custom lists that you can then market to in a variety of different ways. And that's what we're trying to add to, is we're trying to add to the number of ways that you can market to people in order to get them to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested in selling, and of course you're interested in buying. And the more times you do that, the more likelihood it is that you're going to buy houses at an incredibly cheap price. And so that's how we do it every day here in my own business. We are sending Chris out actually tomorrow to build a new list using the app, and it's really how we've built all of our lists that we market. Well, not all. We'll say 90% of the lists that we market to are Driving for Dollars lists, and we do have some other specialty niche lists that we market to as well. But the vast majority of our lists are Driving for Dollars, and that's how we kind of lay the foundation for our farm areas that we market to. We first create a Driving for Dollars list, and then we'll layer on our specialty niche lists on top of that. So bottom line is this: go download the app. It's free to download, and you get a 5-property free trial. So what's the harm? Now, second thing I want to mention is our House Flipping Golden Nuggets podcast. It's a much shorter version of this show, and it basically takes little golden nuggets that we've had on this show over the years, and it's little bite-sized chunks that you guys can listen to, little 5-10 minute episodes, so you're not listening to, these shows, which can run up to an hour, maybe a little bit longer. This one will probably be just on the downside of that, but if If you go subscribe to the House Flipping Golden Nuggets podcast, we would greatly appreciate it. That way we can have more people find that show. And if they find that show, they're going to find this show. And if they find this show, we're obviously going to continue to do this show and try and make it better and better as we move forward, even after 239 episodes. Now, last but not least, for those of you guys out there in listener land that are interested in joining our DFA Mastermind group, we would love to hear from you. Danny, who is on this week's show, has been a member of the DFA for at least a couple of years, and there's a ton of additional people within the DFA, a couple which we mentioned in the interview, but just great people doing amazing things from basically every major metro market from across the country. And so if you want to be able to rub virtual elbows with these folks and be able to basically expand your network and get to know folks that are doing amazing things all across the country and use that network to kind of expand your own knowledge base, but also your own business, feel free to reach out to us. We would love to potentially add you to our group. Now, that pretty much wraps up the housekeeping items. So lastly, before we get into this week's show, a couple of things I want to talk about with what's going on with me and TTM over the course of the past week. I didn't give you guys any update last week because it was just you, me, and the microphone, and did a little chit-chat about market and told some stories. But we've got 2 projects hitting the market this week, which I'm excited about, one of which is a multi-million-dollar new construction project that turned out really nice, but not without its challenges. We've had a few subs that we've unfortunately had to replace over the last couple of houses that we've done, one of which was our tile guy who retired. He was an amazing tile guy. Another guy is our painter, and our painter had a stroke, unfortunately, and so he is no longer able to work. Great guy. I feel terrible for the fact that he's now, basically a vegetable. But he was just an amazing guy, and it's really a sad story. But more than that, he did an amazing job with painting. And so we've had to fill these voids, and sometimes it can be difficult to find great subs that do a great job and also have reasonable prices. And so we've gone through the gauntlet here with a couple of different subs that we're going to need to replace, unfortunately. And so basically what that means on the end in terms of punching out projects is there's a lot of stuff that has to be punched out that shouldn't have to be punched out because people don't do their job right. So we've had a little bit of additional stress the past week trying to punch out one of our high-end projects that unfortunately these guys didn't recognize the high-end nature of the project and didn't give us their best work. And so we have to kind of double back and fix a lot of the things that need fixing so that we can ultimately put our TTM brand and name behind the product that we create. And that's just been a little bit of a pain in my ass, to be honest with you. But we've gotten through it, and that home is going to be hitting the market tomorrow. So by the time you guys listen to this, it'll be on the market. And then we've got another rehab that we're finishing up. It was one that we toured during actually our DFA Mastermind annual event. We finished it up, and we're putting it on the market, and I'm sure it'll do really well. We added value in this one by replacing all the surfaces. We had to do a roof, basically prettying up the house. But one of the biggest changes that we made is we added a 4th bedroom in the basement, and then we created a ensuite for the master bedroom. So those were 2 areas that could really be improved beyond just surfaces, paint, things like that. It really changes the dynamic and layout of the house. And we think that that'll add a lot of value and that the market will reward us for it. So that hits the market at the end of this week as well. And then as soon as I finish recording here with you guys, I'm heading to pick up the keys for our newest acquisition, which was a tax foreclosure property that the gal's out. And we bought it a week ago, and we're going to go in there and check it out and see what we've got to work with. And I think we're going to probably wholesale this one off. We could tear it down. We could build a new property in its place. We could renovate what's there. But I think this is a good one. We've got a decent enough margin on it that this is a good one for quick money. And so we're going to pass this deal along to somebody else and let them kind of create their vision with it. And so I'm going to go get the keys, do a little quick walkthrough, see what we got to work with, and then get Chris going on plopping this thing up on the market and seeing who wants to pay us the most money for it. Other than that, the only other thing that is worth mentioning, and this is one that's really important, is that we've had some dialogue on the show, and then I've actually done a webinar for our DFA this past month about multifamily properties and how they fit into the overall business that you're building when you get into real estate. And so generally real estate starts out with transactional type income, and it's graduates to trying to build longer term assets. And then it graduates to trying to shield a lot of your income from taxes. And so I have a number of rental properties now, but we're looking to expand the number of rentals that we have by a dramatic number in one clean swoop, which is basically we're marketing to a lot of multifamily plexes that are kind of mom and pop owned. And we're going to try and find a couple over the course of the next few months here that we can buy at a tremendous deal, that we can add value, that we can improve with time, and keep those to try and offset some of the income that we create every year through our more active endeavors with flipping properties, building homes, things like that. But the time has come to legally offset a lot of our income through depreciation and accelerated depreciation, and at the same time buy some good assets to do that with. So that's what we're up to. You know, it's funny, I heard a podcast the other day from a very, very successful podcaster, and he had a guy on the show, and they almost made it sound cool that the guy's stance was, I'm happy to pay a lot of taxes because this country has allowed me to be successful. And I do agree with the fact that, you know, this is a great country regardless of, you know, what the political climate is and which side of the fence you're on. It's an amazing country to be able to build a business and build a life. But at the end of the day, there are rules in which we can all play by, and to just not utilize the rules that are available to all of us to minimize your tax liability while building your net worth at the same time is just idiotic. And I couldn't believe these guys were saying these things, and they mentioned nothing about real estate, and they were talking purely about investing in stocks and bonds. And of course, you know, the gains that you get on stocks could potentially be at the lowest rate, long-term capital gains rate. And so even that is 20+%, right? So there's a much better way, folks. That way is real estate. And unfortunately, even some of the biggest talking heads out there don't know what it is that we know. So just a little food for thought for you there. But anyway, bottom line is we're doing some serious marketing for some multifamily assets, and we're going to look to add those to the portfolio here over the next 6 months and beyond. So that pretty much wraps up what's going on with me and TTM over the course of the past week, and sets the table for what is going to be an awesome episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, Real Dealz podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I've personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did.
For everybody that's listening, this is Danny Pitcher. He's from the Charleston market. We've known each other for a number of years now, but we're talking about something we'll get into in a little more detail here as we keep going. But yes, anchors are... There's something you get better at identifying, like right away. You're like, that is going to be a huge amount of work, and is it really going to be worth the effort? Could you make money? Yes. Is it worth all of the brain damage and bandwidth that it eats up? Probably not. It's kind of a skill set that you get better at with time. Sounds like you've kind of crossed that threshold, at least now you're considering it.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where we can't figure out whether to take those projects or we just want to take them in stride. But at least now this one didn't seem like an anchor. And as soon as I get that feeling, though, it's like, all right, I got to jump out of bed Saturday morning. I got to go fix this, get this back on track a little bit quicker than I probably would have before, just so I prevent the anchor status.
which we all don't want. So, all right. So before we get too far down this rabbit hole, let's Let's back it up. So for everybody listening, this is Danny Pitcher. He owns D. Gilpin Properties in Charleston, which I believe I pronounced correctly, right?
That is correct.
Awesome. We've known each other for a number of years. He's been on a journey that I think a lot of you guys will really appreciate listening to, because it hasn't always been just amazing, which, a lot of people like to glorify the highs, but there's some challenges in this business, no question. And Danny has fought through those challenges and kind of popped out the other side, which I think is a great thing to hear, because the road that we travel as real estate investors isn't always an easy one. And most of the reason why people don't make it over the hump is they just can't persevere through the challenges, anchor projects, issues, just stresses, all of those things. So I kind of want to dive into all of that in your story over, the next, half hour here that we're chatting, but maybe take everybody back to when we first started chatting, and really maybe even a little bit before that, when you got into real estate investing. When was that? And kind of give us a little picture of the landscape.
Okay, so I think May 2015 was when I made the decision to get into real estate, and then from then until July 15th, I had hit the books hard, learned everything I could, and then July 15th, I sent that first marketing campaign. That was kind of rocky for a few months, making some good mistakes, and then I think we landed our first deal right around Halloween that year, and then probably landed one about 3 weeks later, and then we were really just off to the races from there.
So wait, real quick then. So basically March, you started kind of saying you wanted to get it, or not saying, deciding you wanted to get into real estate investing. July is when you hit your first direct mail campaign?
Well, I guess it was May, so I think it was just May to July. So,
okay. But then your first deal was October.
Correct. Yeah. Right.
So there was a window there that was probably filled with, should I really be spending money on this? Why is this not working? Am I missing deals? Do you remember that window well?
Yeah, it wasn't too discouraging, because I was just glad the phone was ringing, because we didn't jump in also with tons of money to get it rolling. So I think our first list was probably only like 250, letters out the door. And we actually opened the file the other day. My fiance, Christina, she's kept the file of the evolution of our marketing from the beginning, and we saw those letters. I was like, man, I did get a few deals from those, but they just looked awful in hindsight.
Well, it was 2015, so you had that going. It was a little bit less competitive than 16, 17, and then obviously into the beginning of 18. I think it's dialed back a little bit now. There's a number of people that probably got bumped off or just didn't get the results that they wanted. 15 was kind of that knuckle year where you could still send out garbage, and it was possible to have some luck with a small list, which fortunately you had some of that luck.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I looked at one of them and I was trying to figure out if I sent it or not, because our phone number was wrong. But we hit a few deals quick, and all of a sudden I thought, man, we're off to the races. And yeah, 2015, early 16 was a great time.
What was that first deal? Maybe what were the specs on it, so that everybody knows?
Let's see. I think we were under contract at 120 or so, and then it was pretty clean. Found a buyer who turned out to be a great friend of mine, and I think I sold the contract to him for about $8,000. And then at that point, as soon as that check cleared my bank account, I quit my job and then just pushed all the chips in and just went for it from there.
Gotcha. So that was deal one. Because I know there was a tough deal. There was an anchor project somewhere in there after the first few, where I guess maybe continue down the path here. Was there another successful deal, 2 or 3, before you hit the first real challenge? Yeah,
we actually did just over $100,000 in our first year, including that first, 5 or 6 months to get the first deal. And so we were doing pretty well, and then decided after a few, bigger double closes and really getting familiar with the business and better repair costs, I took down a real big rehab in Charleston, which was in a historic area that we just went huge on. And I guess I didn't think we were going to run into any problems, but I also picked a deal that had a ton of margin attached. So it was I didn't just rush into it and pick a deal that wasn't our best margin yet. So I finally found, probably after about 12 or 13 deals, I said, this is it. Let's do it.
So there, you're about 12 or 13 in. What up to that point, had you rehabbed any? I'm trying to think back, or were they just kind of light rehabs?
We did all wholesales, couple double closes, and I'd helped my dad with one a few years prior to that. But no, we jumped right in the fire on that one.
Okay, so number one lesson to take away, I guess, for people is obviously you were doing well, which was awesome. You generated about $100,000 in net. We'll call it assignment fees, double closing fees, whatever it is, and at that point, you decided to jump into a much bigger type renovation project. Looking back, what's the lesson there, the takeaway?
That's a tough question, because now that I feel like I learned about 10 years worth of development in a year. So now that if you can take the blow and get through to the other side, in hindsight, I don't regret it. But, it was tough, and it was real tough personally on myself and my fiance, and we had just gotten engaged in the middle of it, and it was hell for the last 3 or 4 months, that's for sure.
That's a good answer. I mean, that's a legitimate good answer. Some of the toughest situations that we've been in, popping out the other side, there's a sense of relief, but also you elevate yourself as a business owner and an investor quite a bit, because as you said, there's a lot of lessons to be learned within those, we'll call them challenging projects.
Yeah, that's true. I learned a lot of different positions. We went through a lot of general contractors, and I wore just about every hat, and then ended up general contracting the thing myself. But yeah, we learned a couple things there, and I'm sure I'll never forget. That's for sure.
So at the end of the day, were you finally able to sell that property and move on?
We did. The frustrating part was that our financial partner, our lender on that one, was a good friend of mine, and I had made a few mistakes in doing that deal with him, and we couldn't really renegotiate the deal. We changed our scope on that one. So we originally were going to dust it off, put it back on the market, put about $30,000 into it, and then the more I looked at it, I said, we can really go big with this thing and kill it. And so the project made about $115,000 when we sold it. I think we were all in cost for 25 or so, 115 of profit, which pretty much all went to him. And so we took a lick on that one, numbers wise, but at the end of the day, just being done with it was great. It looked great when we were done, and the buyer was real happy. So in the long term, that's all that matters, I guess.
For sure. That and the takeaway now, right? I'm sure you're a much better financier of your projects kind of moving forward. Yeah,
that one, after that, we kind of regrouped for a little bit, put some more cash in the bank, wholesaling wise, and then now I've got great private lenders and great guys to work with. So those money costs are a lot easier and much more fun to go to the closing table with.
For sure. So I wanted to get through that, because that then sets the table for where you've gone from there, which is number one, private money lenders. It sounds like you've added a few. What were your strategies in doing that? Was it, sphere of influence, people that you knew? Did you do any type of marketing, or we'll call it quote unquote networking, in order to get in front of people that maybe you didn't know previously? How did you get those relationships in place?
I guess I started in our local Facebook group, our investor Facebook group, and just reached out. Well, I actually didn't even, I just searched in the little search bar and found a bunch of lenders and just hit them all up, whether it was through email or through Facebook Messenger. But the one that stuck, and this guy's phenomenal, was a big wholesale deal I did with this big time developer here in town. I pulled this guy's personal Gmail address off of an email string between attorneys, and just hit him up out of the blue, and had a meeting, and we've been doing deals ever since.
That's great. Yeah, the reason why I'm digging there a little bit is because I've had many conversations with Danny O'Bannon, who's also in the DFA, who he's put together some great lending relationships for himself, and it's literally changed his business in the way that he can do projects. And it kind of sounds like now you're in that same situation.
Yeah, I guess I'm never satisfied. It can always get better. And the one thing that I want to do is just not being able to, be able to do projects without putting capital into them, which is what we originally had. And that's what led to us paying way too much for our money. But now we've got, we're paying low interest, but he finances at 70% of ARV, which we don't have to bring a lot to the table. But just in thinking of cash flow for multiple deals, or if we're going to add rentals to the portfolio, we're going to need to get rid of those points and get rid of, we'll have to jump up a little bit, maybe to 75% of ARV. So I'm still hunting for money like that, and it just takes time.
Yeah, that it does. Plus, if you're going to add rentals, you got to get bankable, right? I think we had a discussion about this. That helps a lot in order to get that long-term bank money that's cheap for the rentals, which fortunately you've got a market that it makes sense to probably keep some of those.
Yeah, it does. I saw a lot better rental deals a few years ago, but now that we're finally ready to kind of put those together, 2018 hasn't been the greatest in my market for cash flowing rentals, but that doesn't mean I still can't find 2 to 3 great, fantastic rentals. We've got a couple that we're hopefully putting together right now, and banks seem into it. So I guess we'll just take it one step at a time on those.
It's kind of like what we're at here. We find about 2 to 3 a year that actually make real sense, other than just a long-term redevelopment play. They're few and far between. So it sounds like our markets are fairly similar. I know your prices have come up a lot, and I want to get into the market dynamics here shortly. But so now fast forward to today. Obviously, when you started, I know it was a slim and trim operation. Have you stayed that way? What does the operation look like in terms of your team? Is your fiance involved? Maybe give everybody a little breakdown of what it looks like.
Yep, she's heavily involved now. So she came on full time with me probably about 15 months ago, and she handles the day-to-day marketing. She's also very organized, so she does a lot of the bookkeeping as well. But we've stayed pretty lean, and a lot of that was just taking that big hit on the anchor project, not having the capital just to throw it around, and probably looking back on that, I guess it was pretty responsible. But I'm looking at our numbers now, and we're still pretty lean, and we're finally getting to the point where now I know our system works, and I need to just throw more gas on the fire, and just figure out where I want to put that money, basically. But it's pretty shocking. If I look at October, September, August, July, our average is 1,800 letters a month.
Wow. So if you were going to throw gas on the fire, where would you throw it in terms of help or adding people or things?
Right now, I want to get those numbers up. We need more leads in the door, but most glaringly, I just kind of looked at a few areas of town where we're just not getting leads, and I don't really see other people doing deals. So I just kind of nixed those areas. We just started marketing to a secondary market this week. So there's just it's not that there's a bunch of inventory sitting out there that I can't get to. I'm just not seeing the inventory that I want to be working with in our market. So we're going to expand a little bit down the road. We'll also add in some, we've done some online marketing that I like, and we'll just keep probably slowly growing, responsibly.
Gotcha. So kind of growing your farm area, so to speak, is kind of where you're headed.
Yeah, we're pretty maxed out as far as my local area, and so we're two hours down the road is a market that we like, and we're opening up there this week. But I would love to as soon as we've got a couple deals that we're just waiting to close that have title problems, and as soon as we close those, I'd love to start looking for some more outside help, whether that's an acquisition manager or just someone more of a project management type role.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you're kind of on the knuckle of growing to that next level. You've kind of got, we'll call it a ma and pa type operation at this point, which is you and your fiance, of course. But you're on the verge of kind of bringing in some outside help and taking on we'll call it the responsibility of somebody else's livelihood within your company.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we haven't so far. Is I don't want to be irresponsible and make a promise to someone that we can't keep. So I've just wanted to make sure we have consistent revenue coming in the door to take care of that person first.
Does that just curious question? Does that the idea of bringing on an outside person, does that scare you at all at this point? Does it make you feel uneasy, or do you feel like it's just it's time?
Little column A, little column B, I guess. I don't like the sound of me not being in control of everything, and I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I guess probably most of us type A business owners are, and that's one of the hurdles we have to, let go of the baby a little bit.
Yeah, I just remember my first hire, and it was, or as far as outside person, and I remember thinking that all I could focus on was the monthly nut that I then was responsible for their livelihood. But it's a hard hurdle to get over for a lot of us. But once you get over that hurdle, it's the next one seems a lot lower, and the next one after that seems non-existent, and it's just kind of the way it goes as the business grows. So that's why I'm digging into it a little bit. Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited because it's kind of when I get too deep in the weeds with anchor projects and being a marketer and a project manager and an acquisitions manager, I lose sight of the business. And so recently, was when I was, I stepped back and I said, oh man, I haven't looked, it might have been 90 days since I looked at the business as a whole, and we're able to make those changes, and we're immediately seeing, different results and better results on the changes we made. So being able to do those things in different types of deals is exciting for sure. So what does a day look like? Like how do you treat your daily operations in terms of, do you have time blocking for like lead follow-up or taking calls for marketing? Or are you more kind of out in the field checking on projects? Maybe what kind of projects do you guys have going on right now? What does a week in the life of, D. Gilpin Properties look like? Well, for me, generally, I start at about 7 o'clock, and that early morning is when I do all the creative stuff. That's where I look at numbers on new deals, and it's just really quiet time for me to really get into everything. And then, once the 9 o'clock bell starts ringing, then you start getting pulled in all different directions, whether that's lead follow-up or checking on projects. Right now, we've got one rehab that's seeming a little anchory at this point, and then we're closing on fantastic deal this Friday. So, just kind of getting pulled in all those directions, just making lead follow-up calls when I can. Try to do them earlier in the day. Gotcha. So then how does your fiance fit into the mix? Does she just make sure that the marketing gets out the door, logs all the responses, return mail? Is that kind of where she's fitting in at this point? Yeah, she executes the marketing plan. So we decide where we want to send mail. She makes the schedule, and then we kind of look at the pieces. We keep all our mail in-house, so we're looking at what kind of pieces we're sending, what kind of responses we're getting, and she executes that. She also is the front door to the business, so she takes an initial call from a seller and basically takes a message, and I just give them a shout back as quick as I can. She also does all our online stuff, which is just managing, Facebook page, website, online leads, Facebook leads, that type of thing. So you have an interesting dynamic, and one that I believe Shannon in Cincinnati has the same dynamic, where he has his wife answer the phone as well. So how do you play it out then? Does she basically act as almost, we'll call it a secretary, though she's not. She's obviously your partner, but does she play that role when she answers these calls to try and further conversations, maybe disarm people, make them feel comfortable? What is that? Or is it a plan that you guys have in place, or is that just how it's unfolded? Generally, the way it works is that she gets basic property information and then turns it over to me, and I just try to call them back as quick as I can. But as far as qualifying leads, she'll sift through real lightly, I'm still on the phone with tire kickers all the time, which is fine. But she logs, everything in Podio, and I just get to it as quick as I can. And a lot of that's just a fluid operation, kind of just wing it. Gotcha. So she essentially acts as Chris does here in our office. She literally takes every initial call, whether it be good, bad, or fugly, and deals with them, gets the initial information, and then from there you can kind of, we'll call it, grade the leads and respond accordingly.
Right. Yeah. We, looking at your negotiating with sellers package years ago, I think we took a few of those ideas, or maybe more than a few.
Well, that's good. That's how we've run the business for going on 8 years now. So I'm glad you're using it. How, I guess, was that learning curve for her? Because one of the biggest challenges that I know people face is, at least in this business right now, and the fact that you have to go direct to seller if you actually want to build a consistent business, is taking those calls and getting comfortable there. How was she in that process? Did she take to it, or was it something that she really had to kind of fight through to get comfortable with?
I feel like even for me, I don't mind taking the calls. I find it's a fight sometimes. But she had taken a lot of calls at her previous job, and I think for her it was tough because at that point it's my business, not she worked for a hospital, and it wasn't the hospital's money, it's my money that she doesn't want to burn leads. So I think that is most of it. But and also I think just knowing that she can say, I don't know the answer to this question, but I'll find out the answer, or Danny will call you back, is an okay response.
Gotcha. Yeah, that seems to be one of the biggest hurdles that people have, is just kind of getting over the phone. It sounds like she had phone experience prior, and I know you are pretty fearless when it comes to just talking to people on the phone, but a lot of people that get into this business are a little bit introverted or a little bit scared of the phone. And so the idea of kind of taking, we'll call it phone roulette live, it frightens people, and for good reason. I mean, I remember the first few direct mail campaigns we sent out, looking at the phone ringing, it gives you it can give you a little unsettling feeling in your stomach of, who am I talking to and what are they going to say? And then, of course, there's the structure of the conversation. Even if they are friendly, what am I saying to them? Where am I taking this? And what kind of information am I really trying to extract from the conversation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even for me, still doing it for years now, it was, I'm an introvert, so I kind of always battle with that. And it's just kind of something, do you want to be scared about it, or do you want to get in there and close deals? You got to put up or shut up at some point.
What I've learned in life is that just because you're an introvert in your daily life doesn't mean that you're an introvert in business. So that's.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I just try and put myself in a good position, to where I feel good on the phone.
For sure. So let's talk about the marketing that you are doing. Mainly direct mail. It sounds like you've got some online marketing. You're keeping that direct mail in-house. I'm not going to ask you to share your pieces, of course, but are you doing that to try and give yourself a competitive advantage potentially over your competition?
Exactly. That's always something that I've wanted to do, and just being a smaller company, no matter what industry you're in, it's just easier to be fluid and mobile, and we can make changes really quickly. If something isn't working, or if something is working, we can do more of it. But I've always wanted to craft more of a personal piece, and we tend to get a lot of phone calls. We generally get the first shot at a deal, or we get the only shot, and people really like our message.
Yeah, there's the reason why I want to dig in here a little bit is because we run similar businesses in that way. I have a little more overhead than you, so I got to cover a little bit bigger nut. But with that said, we're just a slightly bigger version of what you guys do in terms of really targeting exact areas, and we send very specialty pieces to those exact areas to try and generate high margin type deals. So it's pretty much exactly what you're doing. But you've got a little bit smaller area that you can kind of max out to, it sounds like, which is why you're looking to go a couple hours down the road and kind of do the same thing, right?
Exactly. I just don't see that we have that big of, a market for distressed inventory at the moment, but I love being able to do niche lists and craft different pieces to small niche lists, and our numbers for those are fantastic. So it's tougher to get a bigger mail house to say, hey, you want to send 246 letters, out the door next Monday to this location.
Yeah, they don't love those orders, do they?
No, no.
So what on the table right now? Maybe let's dive into what do you have in terms of deals that you guys are working on? Anything that you care to share with the folks in terms of what's in the pipeline that might be worth talking about?
So we've got 2 wholesale deals, all locked and loaded, waiting to clear some title issues. So don't really have to do anything with those at the moment. We've got kind of an anchory seeming rehab that over the last few days, all of a sudden I've kind of gotten that hair stand up on the back of my neck, thinking not that we're in trouble, but this was a little more difficult than I thought it was going to be, and taking probably too much brain power.
What is making it quote unquote anchory?
So we bought this deal. Now that I say it out loud, it sounds like I shouldn't have bought the deal, but it'll work out all right. But so we had 3 unpermitted additions, 2 of which were finished. 1 was unfinished. 1 was in the setbacks, and then trying to untangle that with engineers and architects is not that big of an issue, but they are all busy in our market, as I'm sure they are in your market. So the time outlay on that is a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be. And then now we've had a lot of pest problems on that one. So we got bombarded with fleas when we walked in the door. Lady took her 5 cats out of the door, and I guess the fleas had nowhere to go once the cats left. So we had the fleas, and then we had the termites. So no big deal with those 2. But now I found the rats today, and we found the venomous snakes last Friday. So
when you say venomous snakes, what kind of snakes are those?
We found 4 copperheads up in a shed, and I guess we're actually taking the shed down, but one of our guys, I guess one jumped right out at him. So they are unwilling to go any further at this point.
I don't blame them. I think it's time to break out the heavy machinery to knock that shed down if that's the case.
Yeah, maybe a few matches.
Yeah, gas cannon matches. So what, besides the fact that it had unpermitted additions, was this an older built house? I know a lot of your inventory in your market is older built. Was it an older home?
Yeah, probably 1955, I'd say, but the homeowner had tried to do a couple different renovations and just kind of lost her hair on it, and we took it out from underneath of her. But the construction wasn't bad, but the one in the setbacks, we're having to basically deconstruct what was supposed to, the permit said this was a screen porch, and she built it like a straight, extension of her house. So it had, drywall and was basically a sunroom. So what we're doing is deconstructing that back to kind of a porch entryway. We'll make it pretty cool to be a cool, front door of the house when it's all done.
When you say that and I know what this means, but I just want to clarify for our listeners. When you say that they built into the setback, what does that mean exactly?
So basically, in this area of town, you can build, you need 15 foot of clearance before you can build anything. And the way she slid under this was that porches do not apply in that 15-foot zone, but she clearly didn't build a porch. So she flew under the radar on that one. But now, we don't like to fly under the radar, and I don't want to get popped for anything like that. So either we'd have to move it back a few feet, which is impossible, or just, we'll switch it up a little bit.
So basically the lesson here is that when you do a renovation, you bring the inspectors back into a house and they notice that a sun porch is not a sun porch. It's actually an enclosed part of the house that sits within the setback. You got problems.
Yeah. Well, I tried to nip it in the bud, and I went down there preemptively. And I guess the lesson is also always check addition permits. It's pretty easy to go on your local county, and most are online, and you can type in your address, and in this case, there was a permit pulled, but it was never inspected. So they were just as surprised as I was.
That would be a huge tip for everybody listening. That's one thing that we have Chris do because we've been bit in the butt on this before too. And it was for a house that there was a company that basically will come in and put like piers in the ground and jack your house up if it's slanting for whatever reason. And there was a company that came in and did this, but they left the permit open, and we learned the hard way. We basically didn't check that service that you were talking about, which is basically your city website, right? That can show open permits on houses.
Right.
And so we had to go in and basically bring them back into it years later and be like, why didn't you guys close out this permit? come to find out, they basically just bilked the homeowner for like 15 grand for piers that didn't need to go into the house. It was a complete sham. But now you have this open permit that we then have to deal with, and then we have to explain to our buyer on the other end and all the things and hoops that we had to jump through to close it. But yeah, always make sure that you do that search to see if there's open permits on a house, because those permits, if you're going to retail that property, that becomes your problem for sure. And it sounds like that's the case now.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Just the structural engineering is taking too long. So once we get that wrapped up, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, and engineers are slow, we'll call it these days, is probably a mild understatement.
They're not as fast as I am, I'll tell you that.
It's hard. I called for civil engineers. We have a firm that we worked with for a long time, but we've, for whatever reason, decided that we wanted to kind of look around and maybe get a fresh relationship. And I literally called 5 different civil engineers around town, every single one of them. And the first one I just thought was a dick. But after calling 4 others, they all told me the same thing. They said that they're not taking on any new clients. And I thought that was the craziest thing for the first guy to tell me. Like, who says they're not taking on new clients, right? But the reality is that there's only so many engineers out there, and there's a whole bunch of construction going on right now in the marketplace, and they're literally that busy.
That's true. My move now is whenever I need, especially for a small job like that, when they're used to doing bigger commercial projects, find a guy that's down the road. Don't make a guy come 45 minutes across town and say, "Oh, your office is right up the street. So is my project." Perfect match.
Yeah, exactly. So now heading into, you've got a couple wholesale deals. You've got a sort of anchory rehab, but I'm sure you'll fix the problems and get out of that and move forward. You're expanding into potentially a new market that's 2 hours down the road. How do you balance all this with your feeling on the market in general? I know Charleston's an amazing place, so it's insulated with the fact that it's amazing. But beyond that, how do you feel in terms of pricing, activity, inventory? What's your gut feeling for your markets specifically?
You're right. Our market is very strong right now. We are seeing a cooling in some higher priced inventory. One thing that is great for us is that since we go direct to seller, we are not taking on slim margin deals. So I feel like even if we could have a 10% cooling on any of our deals for the next 18 months, and it wouldn't really affect us. We're also sticking out of the higher price stuff unless it's a slam dunk. So we're working in kind of a first-time home buyer, little more expensive than that. That stuff is still flying, but we saw in that anchor project we sold that was a higher price product. Things are definitely slowing a little bit, but part of that could be time of year. I still think we're going to have a great spring. I also just think people's incomes were not matching the rate at which prices were increasing. So I think it's a healthy pushback at this point.
Where is that kind of line in the price point sand, we'll call it, where you're trying to stay around or under for that first time-ish buyer?
I'm liking first time-ish for us is, $250 or so. I'm like in the low 300s. We just did a good wholesale deal, but we sold that, $230, and that went under contract in, I think, 8 days with a hurricane bearing down on us. So that was pretty good. And that was right. We listed Labor Day weekend, so that was not a good weekend to list. So we had about 3 or 4 days after that, and then we went right under contract and closed in 4 weeks. So I still think good deals, good design. That's also a big key. We try hard not to make our rehabs look like the inside of a Lowe's. I think that's important.
There's a fair number of those out there.
Yeah.
There's no question. What real quick on the wholesale deal, what were the dynamics behind that? Was it livable? Did it need a lot of rehab? What made you decide to go wholesale on that one?
It was very livable and it was clean. It had never had central air, so we popped in central air in a roof, and then we finished the floors and painted, and we were in and out in about a little over 2 weeks, and we were, I think, start to finish on the project about 50 days.
Okay. So you did probably, we'll call it just a real light rehab, really, is what it comes down to.
It felt real light. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
The light rehabs and the no rehabs are a nice feeling, that's for sure. But yeah, unfortunately, that's the reality is that you can't live purely off just well, you can, but to be able to do a variety of different projects helps you grow your business a lot quicker. That's for sure, without having to forcefully send out tons and tons and tons of marketing in order to get more leads. But you're a little bit constrained on your marketplace, so you have to do a little more in terms of types of projects.
Yeah, that was a good one. We were the third. We generally don't have much competition around our deals, but we were the third highest offer on that one, and we came in last. And we were able just to look at it a little bit differently. I think the other two offers were looking to take this thing retail, and the numbers weren't as good, but added a bunch of timeline to the product. So we were able to sell that, I think, in the 230 range, where other homes in the area were selling in the 300 range. So it was just you got to make sure and look at those things. You don't have to take everything full retail.
So you think that was the reason why you guys got it? Because if you were fighting against two other offers, that was a lot of competition to be able to joust that one out, where normally, guys that are playing against two other offers, you're playing the who wants to make the least game. And it sounds like that project turned out really well for you. So was it just a matter of shifting, how do we exit this thing? And that really made all the difference there?
Exactly. To get rid of the first offer, they put a big time constraint on the seller. They said, we need to know by noon. And so I scheduled my appointment for 10:30 in the morning and basically filibustered her out of this deal. I kept her there at the table for about 3 hours, and then, I think we ended up matching their offer and went with them, but they were not looking to do the same thing to the deal that we were. So it was just a real easy, low risk deal for us.
Little Snapple fun fact, that same reason why I bought the property where I built my current house was that exact reason. Somebody had given them the I need your answer by 5:00 on Sunday, of all times, and seller just didn't like that pushiness, and so I was over there Monday morning and we had a handshake deal. So there you go.
Perfect.
Right?
Perfect.
Very cool. So then moving forward, you feel pretty confident in your marketing, and it sounds like you're just kind of underwriting deals that have good profit potential to kind of protect you if there is any type of slowing, but you feel pretty confident that your market's going to stay strong at least through the spring selling season.
For sure. We are closing on a deal Friday, and so we're under contract on that one for $292. We'll put about 90 into it, and we've actually got an as completed appraisal for $565. So even any sort of cooling, it's a beautiful property too. So any cooling, I think we're pretty well insulated.
Very cool. Yeah, that's it's a big rehab though too, $90,000. So hopefully there's no copperhead snakes to be found there.
No. Yeah. It's on the water, so I'm sure there's a few copperheads.
Yeah, well, if it's on the water, it sells, period, the end. So that's kind of the way that works.
Right.
So last couple things here. Number one is, what are some of the reasons, or the reason, maybe there's two, maybe there's one, maybe there's five, but what are some of the reasons that you think that you made it over the hump and made this career of being in real estate work while so many people kind of struggle to do that? What do you think? It was an innate thing within you? Or do you think it was a tactical thing that other people can do? Or why do you think you made it over the hump while others don't?
Definitely a little bit of both. I cut the tethers after our first deal with my job, so I needed to have kind of a zero options mentality on that one, or else we're not going to eat. So I feel like that's all the motivation I need, but also I think it's just a business that I really lent myself to. My family's always been in real estate, and it's always seemed like a natural fit for me, and I just understand it. I enjoy the product, and I enjoy what we can do with the business.
Okay, fair enough. Good answers. Okay, well, for those people that maybe want to follow what you've got going on, I know you post some pretty cool pictures of your projects on your Facebook page, but for those people that want to follow you and check out what's going on, what's the best way for them to do that?
Our Facebook page is D. Gilpin Properties, pretty easy to find, and we're also just recently more active on Instagram under D. Gilpin Props.
Are you doing Instagram stories?
Christina runs the reins on that. I'm not very good at it, nor do I want to put the time in, but she's perfect for it.
Okay. Well, there you go. See, everybody stays in their lane. That's how you have a happy soon-to-be wife and happy life and good company. So
exactly.
Very cool. Well, everybody go check those places out if you want to see more of the projects that Danny's got going on. But more importantly, just connect with him. He's been through, some ups and downs on this business, and in the process, he's built a great business. And that's why I wanted to have him on the show. So I appreciate you taking the time to hop on here with me, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed hearing your story and kind of hearing your progress.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it, Tucker, man. I couldn't have done this without you the last few years. You're a guiding light for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. Appreciate those kind words.
Thank you, sir.
All right, what'd you guys think of that interview with Mr. Danny Pitcher? Pretty good, huh? He's got a great story, as I said in the intro, and more than anything, I think that he can just really relate to, or you guys out there in listener land can relate to his journey, which is one that it wasn't smooth sailing. He did really well in his first year in terms of revenue generated from wholesale fees, but then he veered off that path to try and get into the world of renovating houses as well. And he kind of took a misstep there, and he got into a project that ended up being a big, big project for your first project, which is one of the big things that I've preached a lot about on this show, which is you got to be very careful what project you select when you're taking your maiden voyage going from wholesaling and wholetailing into rehabbing. Because if you pick the wrong one, it can be quite an anchor project. And so anyway, Danny picked the wrong one, but he persevered through it, and he made it out the other side, and he's a much better investor for it. And ultimately, his business is going to flourish that much more at the end of the day. He just had to go through some temporary pain to get there. But he recognizes that, and I just think it's a great story, and I think it's one that you guys can definitely relate to and understand. So before I get out of here today, I wanted to leave you guys with the closing success quote. And this quote, I think, ties in nicely to this week's episode. I'd asked Danny how or why he feels like he made it over the hump, or he has made it in this business while so many don't or continue to struggle. And his answer was that he quit his job and he basically burned the ships. He told himself that this is what I'm going to do, and he was committed to making that a reality. And so this week's closing success quote is by T.D. Jakes, which I'm not sure who that is, but I'm sure I could figure that out if I Googled it. But more importantly, the quote, and this is the part that ties in, is, "You cannot conquer what you are not committed to." So I feel like that ties in nicely to this week's show. It really explains kind of Danny's position. He wanted to conquer this business, and he was absolutely committed to making that happen. And if you do that, you can accomplish anything in this world. All right, folks, this wraps up episode 239. I'll see you all on the next one.